All right, so are you looking into Solana?
Trying to see if it's going to be the next big thing in crypto by 2025.
Yeah, you came to the right place.
We
We did a deep dive into a podcast episode
Oh, nice.
from Crypto Insights Weekly
Okay, yeah.
called Solana 2025, Decoding the Future of Crypto Innovation.
Catchy.
And let me tell you,
What'd you think?
it was a wild ride.
Oh, wow.
Now we're not
Right
giving
on.
financial advice,
Of course, of course.
just, helping you unpack some insights into
Yeah.
this tech and the trends that are driving it.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
we did find some potential bumps in the road.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So what stood out to you?
Well, right off the bat, they talk about Solana's speed and scalability.
Oh, yeah. Two things they're already known for.
Yeah, and the podcast really emphasizes why those are make or break factors
Oh, for sure.
in the blockchain world.
Yeah, absolutely. In a world where everything's moving so fast, a slow network is going to get left behind.
Totally. But I was really curious about the ZK compression update that they talked about.
Oh, yeah. That sounds like it could be a game changer.
For real?
So essentially, it's a way of shrinking the amount of data that needs to be processed,
Okay.
which just makes transactions on Solana
Uh-huh.
even faster and cheaper.
So it's like,
Like they took a highway
okay,
and added a bunch of express lanes.
more lanes, a smoother ride for everyone.
Exactly.
But does that also mean more traffic?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah. Could a city,
Yeah.
or in this case, a blockchain, get too crowded?
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
And honestly, the podcast didn't really address any potential downsides to attracting too much activity.
Oh, really?
No.
Huh?
So yeah, ZK compression makes things more efficient, but are there trade-offs?
Like, what do you mean?
Well, does this supercharged efficiency come at the expense of security or decentralization?
Those are good questions.
Yeah, I think they're worth exploring.
Yeah, totally. It's easy to get caught up in all this hype about speed and scalability,
Yeah.
but we got to remember
Yeah.
that there's a balance.
Absolutely.
So, okay, we've got this super fast, efficient platform.
Right.
What are people actually doing with it?
Yeah, good question.
The podcast talks about Solana becoming a hotbed for DeFi and NFTs.
Exactly. And it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
If you're building these complex applications, especially in DeFi,
Right.
you need a platform that can handle it.
Totally.
And Solana's speed and low transaction costs,
Right.
they make it super attractive
Yeah.
for those kinds of projects.
But what about this whole ecosystem diversity?
What do you mean?
Well, they mention
Okay.
everything from gaming to real estate tokenization,
Right.
even art platforms. Does focusing on so many different areas
Yeah.
dilute Solana's strength
Oh,
compared to, say, Ethereum,
I see what you're saying.
which has really doubled down on DeFi?
Yeah, you're thinking strategically.
Well,
That's a valid question.
yeah,
Is it better to be a jack of all trades or a master of one?
right.
And the podcast presents this diverse ecosystem as a strength,
Okay,
attracting a wider range of users and developers.
right.
But I think it'd be interesting to see how that plays out long term.
Yeah. Could there be a point where Solana spreads itself too thin, or does this breadth become its competitive advantage?
Yeah, lots to think about there.
Okay, so we've got the tech, we've got this booming ecosystem, but we can't ignore the fact that Solana is operating within a much larger crypto landscape.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, the podcast emphasized the importance of market sentiment.
Okay.
That overall mood and confidence of crypto investors.
Right.
It can have a huge impact on individual tokens,
For sure.
even one as promising as Solana.
So even if Solana has all the right ingredients, if the overall market takes a nosedive,
Yeah.
Solana could get swept up in that.
Exactly.
It's like they say, a rising tide lifts all boats, but a falling tide.
Right, exactly.
And it's not just about general market trends either.
Right.
The podcast specifically called out the influence of Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Oh, yeah,
They're the giants in the room,
for sure.
and their movements can have a ripple effect in
Absolutely.
the entire market.
Yeah, if Bitcoin sneezes, Solana might catch a cold.
It would be really interesting to see some data on that.
Oh, yeah, like what?
Like, how closely has Solana's price actually correlated with Bitcoin's drops in the past?
Interesting.
Yeah. Has it shown resilience, or does it tend to mirror those bigger swings?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And honestly, one the podcast unfortunately didn't explore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all well and good to talk about market sentiment.
Yeah.
But seeing those real-world correlations would really drive the point home.
Totally.
And Beyond the crypto-specific trends, there's also those bigger picture economic factors to consider.
All right, great.
Things like global inflation and interest rates.
Yeah, how much weight should we be giving those?
Right, it's easy to get tunnel vision when you're deep in the crypto world.
Yeah, for sure.
But these macroeconomic trends can definitely influence investor behavior across the board.
For sure. If people are feeling uncertain about the economy, are they more likely to hold on to their crypto or sell it off?
It's almost impossible to say for sure.
Right.
But I think the podcast was right to bring those external factors into the conversation.
Yeah.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity.
Totally, the analysis. And speaking of complexity,
Yeah.
there's one more big wild card we haven't touched on yet.
Oh, what's that?
Regulation.
The elephant in the room.
Right.
The crypto world is still the Wild West.
Yeah.
And governments around the globe are trying to figure out how to wrangle it in.
What's the podcast's take on how this regulatory landscape could impact Solana?
Well, it's presented as a double-edged sword.
Okay.
On one hand, clearer regulations could bring stability and legitimacy to the crypto space,
Right.
attracting, those more traditional investors who've been hesitant to jump in.
Yeah. So it's like a seal of approval.
Exactly.
Hey, this is a legitimate market.
Right.
You can invest with confidence.
But then there's the flip side.
Uh-oh.
What if regulations become overly restrictive?
Yeah.
Could they stifle innovation and growth in the space?
I mean, how much of a risk is that, really?
That's a good question.
It seems like governments are still trying to wrap their heads around this whole crypto thing.
Yeah, for sure.
What specifically does the podcast suggest could happen on the regulatory front?
Well, they painted a pretty stark scenario.
Okay.
What if a major DeFi or NFT project built on Solana
Yeah.
runs into trouble with regulators,
Oh.
fines, lawsuits, even shutdowns?
Oh, wow.
It's all on the table.
Really?
Yeah, and the podcast argued this wouldn't even have to be Solana's fault. The fallout from a big project getting slapped on the wrist could be enough to spook investors and just create this ripple effect of uncertainty across the whole platform.
That makes sense. It's like if a building in a city is condemned, even if the rest of the neighborhood is fine, it still casts a shadow
Exactly.
over the whole area.
And it raises an important question.
What's that?
How much due diligence are investors doing on the individual projects built on Solana?
Oh, good point.
It's not enough to just assess the platform itself.
Right.
You have to consider the risks associated with everything operating on it as well.
It's like investing in real estate. You don't just look at the house, you look at the neighborhood, right?
Precisely.
You want to know about the other tenants, the local ordinances, all of it.
A holistic view is essential.
So we've got this incredibly promising technology, a thriving ecosystem. But then we have these big looming questions about market sentiment and regulation.
It's true.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's safe to say things are going to get a lot more interesting as we move closer to 2025.
For sure.
But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's take a step back
Okay.
and unpack some of these big picture ideas a little further. When we come back, we'll dig into how these factors might actually play out in the real world
Okay.
and what it could mean for investors like you.
Love it.
It's funny how we keep coming back to this city analogy
I know,
when
right?
we talk about Solana.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the ecosystem either.
Right.
Even those technical updates, like the ZK compression we were discussing,
Oh, yeah.
they play into it too.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
How does a tech upgrade relate to a city?
Okay, so think about it. When a city improves its infrastructure,
Okay.
things like roads, public transport,
Right.
utilities,
Okay.
it becomes a more attractive place to live and work, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Makes everything smoother
Right.
and more efficient.
Exactly. And that's what ZK compression does for Solana.
Okay.
It's like constantly upgrading the city's infrastructure to keep pace with growth and attract even more activity.
I see.
But it also made me wonder about something the podcast mentioned.
Oh,
They were really emphasizing how Solana's attracting all these projects.
right.
But is there a point where a city, or a blockchain for that matter,
Yeah.
becomes too crowded?
Interesting question.
Right.
Is there such a thing as too much of a good thing
Exactly.
when it comes to building out this Solana ecosystem?
It's a balance.
Okay.
The podcast presented this rapid growth as purely a positive thing,
Yeah.
but maybe there are downsides they didn't explore.
Like what?
Well, like, could attracting too many projects actually dilute resources?
That's a good point. Maybe focusing on a few key areas, like Ethereum has with DeFi, would make them a stronger player. in those specific niches.
It's worth considering.
Yeah.
And this idea of balance, it extends to the whole market sentiment discussion, too.
Right.
Remember the podcast talked about how Solana can get swept up in these broader crypto market trends?
Yeah, the whole if Bitcoin sneezes, Solana catches a cold. But they didn't really get into specifics.
Oh.
I'd love to see some data on how closely those prices have actually correlated in the past. Has Solana shown any resilience during those Bitcoin dips?
I agree. Some real-world examples would be much more compelling.
Totally.
Than just talking about market sentiment in the abstract.
Exactly.
And beyond the crypto-specific trends, there are those macroeconomic factors that could come into play.
Right. Things like global inflation.
Exactly.
Interest rates, even geopolitical events. How do those factor into the equation?
It's tough to say.
Yeah.
Do they impact the crypto market as a whole? Or could they affect individual tokens like Solana differently?
That's a really interesting question. And unfortunately, the podcast didn't delve into those nuances either.
Yeah, they didn't.
Maybe that's something we need to research further on our own.
Yeah.
It's like we need to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
For sure.
Beyond just the crypto world.
Exactly. And speaking of things that require us to zoom out.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Let's revisit this regulation question.
Oh, yeah.
The podcast presented it as a major factor that could shape Solana's future. But I felt like they didn't really give us concrete examples.
Yeah, I agree. They talked about the potential for stricter regulations to stifle innovation. But how likely is that to happen? Are there any specific regulatory actions on the horizon that we should be aware of?
Well, they did offer one pretty sobering scenario.
Uh-oh.
Imagine a major DeFi or NFT project built on Solana gets into trouble with regulators.
Okay.
We're talking fines, lawsuits, maybe even a shutdown.
Ouch. That would definitely send shockwaves through the whole Solana ecosystem, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the podcast argued that it wouldn't even have to be Solana's fault directly.
Okay.
The negative attention and uncertainty surrounding a big project could be enough to spook investors and create this ripple effect across the entire platform.
It's almost like guilt by association, right?
Yeah.
Even if Solana itself is doing everything by the book, if there are shady projects operating on the platform, it could tarnish their reputation.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the importance of due diligence.
Right.
It's not enough to just assess Solana as a platform.
Yeah.
Investors need to carefully consider the risks associated with the individual projects built on it as well.
So it's about looking beyond the shiny tech and the hype.
Right.
And really understanding the inner workings of this whole ecosystem.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's like we said before.
Yeah.
You don't just invest in a house.
Right.
You invest in the neighborhood, too.
Exactly.
You want to know about the other residents, the local ordinances, everything that could impact your investment.
Okay, so we've got all these pieces of the puzzle.
We do.
A promising technology, a rapidly growing ecosystem, the uncertainty of market sentiment, and the looming question of regulation.
Yeah, it's a lot.
How do we put it all together?
It's tough.
What's the takeaway for someone trying to figure out where Solana fits into the future of crypto?
Well, I think it's safe to say that Solana is a project with a lot of potential.
Yeah.
But it's facing some significant challenges, too.
Definitely not a slam dunk.
Right.
Even with all the exciting things happening on the platform.
Exactly. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from this deep dive.
Okay.
Solana's future is far from certain.
Yeah.
There are a lot of factors that could influence its trajectory.
Right.
And it's important to weigh both the potential risks and rewards.
So it's not about blindly jumping on the Solana bandwagon.
No.
It's about staying informed, asking critical questions, and making an informed decision based on your own risk tolerance.
Exactly.
Goals.
And remember, this is just one podcast episode.
Right.
It's a great starting point for our deep dive.
For sure.
But it's crucial to do your own research.
Yeah.
And explore multiple perspectives before making any investment decisions.
Couldn't agree more. This episode has definitely given us a lot to think about.
Yeah.
But before we get lost in all the details, I think it's important to step back.
Okay.
And ask ourselves a bigger question.
Oh, I like this.
What do we actually want from the future of crypto?
Now you're getting philosophical. But seriously, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah. What are our hopes, our concerns, our vision for this technology?
Right. Because ultimately, that's what will guide our decisions as investors.
Exactly. Do we want a future where crypto is all about speed and efficiency, like Solana seems to be pushing for?
Yeah.
Or are there other values that we prioritize, like decentralization, security, or even social impact?
I love that you're bringing those values into the conversation because it's not just about making money.
Right.
It's about shaping the kind of world we want to live in.
Exactly. And I think that's where the real power of this deep dive lies.
Yeah.
It's not just about analyzing Solana's potential. It's about prompting us to think critically about the future of crypto as a whole.
Well said.
It's about understanding the technology, the players.
And trends, and then asking ourselves, what role do we want to play in this evolving landscape?
All right, so we've gone from super technical deep dives into ZK compression to philosophical musings about the future of crypto.
We have.
Where do we even go from here?
Well, I think it's time we bring this back to you, the listener.
Yes.
We've shared our insights. We've dissected the podcast.
Right.
But now it's your turn to join the conversation.
Exactly. We've thrown out a lot of ideas and questions.
Yeah, we want to hear what you think.
So we talked about Solana's potential, all that tech behind it, the bigger picture of the crypto market. But now we want to hear from you.
Yeah, what do you think?
Where do you see Solana fitting in?
In the future of crypto.
Yeah. Do you think it has what it takes to become a major player?
Or are the risks too great?
We talked about the speed.
The scalability.
That booming ecosystem.
Right, all that good stuff.
But we also can't forget about the regulatory uncertainty.
For sure.
The influence of the broader market.
Absolutely.
The potential downsides of rapid growth.
It's a lot to weigh.
There's no easy answer.
No.
Maybe Solana will be the platform that brings crypto to the masses.
Yeah, maybe it'll be the go-to for DeFi and NFTs.
Right. Or maybe it'll fizzle out another promising project that couldn't quite live up to the hype.
It's true. The truth is we just don't know yet.
And that's what makes this space so exciting.
It's a wild ride.
But we don't want to leave you hanging with just a bunch of questions and no answers.
Of course not.
So let's end this deep dive with a little thought experiment.
I like it.
Imagine it's 2025.
Okay.
Solana has navigated the regulatory hurdles. The market is thriving.
Yeah.
The ecosystem is stronger than ever.
Right, I'm picturing it.
What does that world look like?
What problems has Solana solved?
Yeah, what innovations has it enabled?
How has it impacted your life?
And the lives of others.
Take a moment and just envision that future.
Barely picture it.
Because by imagining those possibilities, we can start to shape them.
We can make informed decisions as investors, as users.
As participants.
As participants in this evolving crypto landscape.
So this deep dive into Solana has been about more than just analyzing a single project.
It's been about exploring the potential of this technology to change the world.
Absolutely. And empowering you, the listener, to be a part of that change.
So keep learning, keep exploring.
Keep asking those tough questions.
The future of crypto is being written right now.
And you have the power to shape it.
That's all from us on this deep dive into Solana.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening.
And until next time,
stay curious.
And keep on diving deep.